To the honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to rise today and speak in favour of the wonderful bill introduced by the great member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley that I think is so pivotal and engages so many important concepts about our democracy. When I was first elected 14 years ago in 2008, I sat down with my young staffer, Sam Heppel, and we talked about bills to be introduced in this House. And I asked him, I said, what do you think is the first bill I should introduce as a private member in this place? Without flinching, he said, lower the voting age. And I said, really? Tell me why you think that's an important bill. And he said, well, you tell me, are you a Democrat? And I said, well, yes, I am. He said, well, that's the only reason that you need. There is a fundamental difference in listening to the debate and listening to my colleagues on the Conservative side between really what the proper characterization is to give to voting in a democracy. I just heard my previous Conservative colleague refer to voting in this country as a privilege. I disagree. Voting is a right. And it's a right of citizenship. Yeah. And I think that's where we start this debate. The truth is in a democracy, if we really have government by the people, for the people, if we really have values of democracy that we uphold to the world on the global stage, then that means that we give to our citizens, without discrimination, the right to have a say in who their government is and what laws govern them. That is democracy. And when we have barriers that seek to take away that right from certain citizens based on different attributes, that's where I think this debate starts. Now, the truth is that the history of the franchise in Canada is one of constant movement. This country started off with giving the vote to white males who owned property of a certain age, over the age of, I think it was 21. Then, of course, it became white males over 21, regardless of whether they owned property. And then it was white males over 21. And then, over the years, it's been women. It's been expanded to women, to Indigenous people. At one time, based on your race, you couldn't vote in this country. If you were of Japanese ancestry or Chinese ancestry, you couldn't vote in this country. Ultimately, of course, we lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. So the history of the franchise, the history of democracies as they evolve, is one of constantly expanding the right to vote. Now, why is this an important bill today? I think New Democrats have stood up in the House and outlined literally a dozen or more different reasons. At a time of low voter turnout, and I've added up the percentage of every federal election since 2000, we have an average of 63% turnout. That means that about 4 in 10 Canadians don't even cast a ballot. And by the way, that number has been steadily declining over the past century. The numbers in provincial elections and municipal elections are actually appalling, where we have Democratic participation in this country sometimes in the high teens or early 20%. So we have, I think, in this country, a crisis in our democracy that we as parliamentarians ought to address. And one way to address it is to expand the voting age to a portion of our population that has been discriminated against purely because of their age. The arbitrary drawing of a line without any regard to ability. So what are the benefits of lowering the voting age? Well, first of all, it will increase participation. Research is absolutely clear that if you lower the voting age and you combine that particularly with a strong educational program in our high schools where we educate our young people of the obligations of citizenship and teach them how our democracy works without any regard for how they vote, but just that they should vote. If you can get young people voting in the first election that they're capable of voting in, you're likely to have them voting for life. The chances of an election happening for a 16 or 17-year-old is in grade 10, 11, or 12. So you've got a 3 in 4 chance that you're going to have an election during high school, where you can take that crucial time and start establishing that positive record of voting in our democracy. 16 and 17-year-olds have the longest view of any citizen. The issues that are important to them may be different than someone who's 80 or 85 or 90 years old. They're looking ahead 80 years into the future. Yet we are preventing those people from having their say. in the issues that will affect them probably most profoundly. I also think that young people, of course, show a responsibility and, as never before, are engaged in our democracy. I have met 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds. Frankly, I've met 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds who are engaged politically, interested in the world around them, informed, and would cast an absolutely informed and responsible vote. Pains me to say this. Contrarily, I've met 50-year-olds who, frankly, are completely disengaged from the political process, and we would never, ever think of preventing them from going to a ballot box. So the idea, as some people raise, that 17-year-olds are, by some definition, not qualified to vote, is applying a standard to 17-year-olds that we would never apply to anybody else. Look, we have already had this outlined. 16 and 17-year-olds, many of them work and pay taxes. The American Revolution was fought in part over the rallying cry of no taxation without representation. We will take money off a paycheck of a 16 and 17-year-old willingly, and conservatives will do this, liberals will do this, and then they'll turn around and tell those people they have no say in how that money's spent. Frankly, that is absolutely unacceptable. We allow 16 and 17-year-olds in many cases to drive, to serve in the military, to shoot a firearm, to buy ammunition, to marry with consent. They can join political parties and vote in political leaderships, just like 14, 15, 16-year-olds did do in the NDP, and I'm sure under 18-year-olds did in the recent Conservative leadership. I'm getting a royal wave here. I think I have to wrap this up. I'll just say this is an excellent idea. Let's engage people in our democracy, and let's support this and make Canadian democracy flourish in a better way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.